seeking to invalidate the votes of tens of millions of Americans.
Seize control of an airplane in flight.
Their only purpose is to perpetuate the globe lie.
Help perpetrate an Apollo 11 moon landing hoax for NASA.
They're high-fiving each other in the streets. America is saved.
You're talking like a reasonable, responsible person. That's not
into a goblin's nest to not get some goblin vomit slopping blood.
Rise up, oh heart, believe that faith rise up in me.
Good morning. My name's Mike Brownlee, Director of Metro Kids Society, one of the board members here, and your home guest speaker for today. We're continuing the sermon series called Cutting Through the Static. We've got like 2 or 3 series that we kind of intersperse. Conrad has one, I have one. We just kind of take turns. So if you've missed the other ones, then they're on Facebook. You can catch up. It's okay. But essentially, what I want to talk about in this whole series has to do with the fact that there is so many voices around us, so many things happening in our culture and in our world. It gets very difficult to sort through exactly what we should be doing with our lives, what we should be believing, where we should go. And sometimes it feels like there's just so much chaos surrounding us. It's helpful to get a word from God that just cuts through all that and set everything apart so you know what you're going to do. And Jesus anticipated this, and so he gave us this word that just simplifies everything and boils everything down to the essentials. And it's in Mark 12:30-31. Jesus says there's 2 things important. First one, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. And the second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There's no commandment greater than these. Now today I want to do part 2 of loving God with your mind. Last time I talked about how we can love God with our mind even by giving our doubts to Him. Now today I want to focus on that we can love God with our minds by pursuing the truth. And truth is a bit of a slippery subject, and it's a little difficult to get a grasp on, especially in our culture today. So I want to go back to when Jesus was on trial before Pontius Pilate. And this is the passage that Jairo read at the beginning of the service this morning. So Jesus is being interviewed by Pontius Pilate, and Jesus says this, "For this reason I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." And Pilate says, "What is truth?" Excellent question, Pilate. What is truth? Now, Pilate wasn't fully prepared to listen to Jesus because he wasn't even sure what truth was. And I think there's a lot of people in our society that are in the same boat. We're wondering, what is truth? This question that Pilate asked just echoes throughout the generations. And not knowing what is true or what truth is, this is something that can contribute to that sense of static in our lives. And it's getting increasingly hard to know what's true and who's telling the truth. I mean, if the recent political gong show south of the border in the U.S., they like to call elections, taught us anything, it's that our journalists aren't necessarily totally impartial. Because, now, this is probably an oversimplification, and I don't want to wade too deeply into political waters, because that's dangerous, and I'm Canadian, so it really, doesn't affect me that much. But here's what I observed, okay? It seems like people of one political bent listened to CNN and watched CNN, and they were reporting everything from one side of the political spectrum. And then Fox News was reporting everything from the other side of the political spectrum. And based on what spectrum, what side you were on, that's the station that you watched or listened to and got your news from. And so as a result, the 2 camps became more and more entrenched and more divided, and were just kind of lobbing missiles at each other through the press. And it seems like the perspectives were very, very different, and they would report on different things. And so this leads us to kind of conclude that their perspective and their political bent affected what they were putting out there as truth. okay? Now, I don't want to get political, but there was also this term that I heard floating around, particularly out of U.S. politics, and that was fake news. Has anyone heard this term? Yeah? Okay. So the reason that certain individuals could dismiss things as fake news was because it is actually a thing. There is such a thing as fake news, which is kind of weird because traditionally news can be trusted, not to be made up. But technology is advancing to the place where even video clips we can't trust anymore, which is a little bit scary. There's videos floating around now, deep fakes, and they can digitally recreate footage of somebody saying something that they actually aren't. I want to show you a video from the news, I think from Toronto. This was on the anniversary of the 50th anniversary of the Apollo moon landing, okay? And this is something that MIT put together, and this news station reported on it.
Yeah, this is quite something. So that was, as you say, 51 years ago last night, about 9 o'clock in the evening, that Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon. And just after he and Buzz started walking around on the lunar surface, they got a call from Richard Nixon, and Nixon called it the most famous telephone call ever, and he's probably right. And he congratulated the astronauts. Everything, as we know, went well with Apollo 11. But in case it didn't, Nixon had this contingency speech where he would, tell the American people, the astronauts, they passed away. They were going to have to leave the bodies on the moon. He never had to give that speech, of course, but experts at MIT, they did a deep fake video, as they call it, where they faked Nixon saying that speech. Have a look at it.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace. They will be mourned by their families and friends. They will be mourned by their nation. They will be mourned by the people of the world.
So that
Never
video
happened,
is not real?
But how real did that look?
It looked super real. It's made up.
They had an actor do the voice, and then they pieced the lip movements together from previous Nixon speeches. So it was completely fake. And they did it. It took them like a couple of months to do that at MIT, and they said they did it, Janella, to highlight how dangerous these deepfake videos are. If we can't trust videos now, that opens up all sorts of Pandora's boxes, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a little bit scary, isn't it? So now it's to the point where you can't even trust video clips of people saying things. So it gets us into some murky waters, and there's potential there for actual, real, fake news. And so this informs the question, what is truth, a little bit, right? So in our culture, there's this whole movement, postmodernism is part of it, that we are increasingly in our world looking at things like this and answering the question, what is truth, that there is no truth. Because if you can't trust this thing or that thing, then maybe there's no such thing as things that are true for all people, for all times, for all places. And this has led many people to abandon the concept that anything can actually be absolutely true. And that there are certain things, particularly morality, this comes in, well, that's true for you, but it's not true for me, right? And if you're trying to build your life on that, then it gets to be very, very shaky. It gets to be a very shaky foundation if there's nothing that you can actually rely on to be true. And it can result in some pretty deep confusion. I want to show you one more video that is a great illustration of how some people can approach truth and what kind of mess this gets us into. This is by a skit team called One Time Blind.
This is a red balloon. It's true, it's red, we all know our colors. The absolute truth is that this balloon is red.
No, it's not. That's green.
What?
This right here is a green balloon.
That is the prettiest yellow balloon. Yellow? This is red. Yeah, come over here.
No, it's green.
It's red! Yeah, I know, it's a red balloon.
Hey, will you look at it from my point of view, please?
What?
Hey, nice blue balloon.
Blue. It's green! Green? It's red. What?
Why are you saying it's red when it's blue? Huh?
It's totally purple from here! Purple? Okay, you know what? Let's just settle this once and for all, okay?
Where are you going?
Hey, what color is this balloon?
I only see in black and white.
Hey, Mark, what color?
There is no balloon.
This is ridiculous.
Hey, I know what the problem is. Look, my mom taught me that this was blue. But, then she said this is red and green, yellow, and on and on.
Okay, I get that your mom taught you that was blue, but I mean, that's not the truth.
Whoa, why are you talking bad about his mom? Yeah.
I'm not.
Listen, I respect your mother.
Thank you.
And the way she raised you. She taught you that was blue. Our moms taught us that it was red. That's the way it goes.
I thought you said it was green.
It is green. See, I'm smart. I went to college. And in college, I learned all these different theories about color.
Really?
And my color professors who have doctorates in color. Do you have a doctorate in color?
No.
It shows, okay? They can't even agree on one theory of color, so you have to look at all the different theories and pick which one works best for you. And green is great for me.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
No, you can't just pick whatever color fits your life the best. Red is red.
Okay, do you know the word intolerant?
Yeah.
Because that's what you're being right now. All right, you're shoving your opinion down my throat.
Okay, it's not my opinion, it's the truth.
Hold on. All we're saying is that we need to stop arguing about trivial things. Like truth.
The funny thing about truth is, it's true, whether you believe it or not.
So, if we don't have a working definition of truth, it really tends to mess up how we interact with each other. And it actually doesn't make logical sense that there are certain things that are true for all people, for all times, and for all places. We're going to talk about how we find those in a minute. But see, there's a second way that we could answer Pilate's question of what is truth, okay? And that way is this. It's all true. Okay, what I mean by this is I am seeing from my own observation that there is a big uptick in conspiracy theories lately, particularly in the past year and a half. I mean, we've got the Flat Earth movement on the rise, there's QAnon, there's 5G mind control, just to name a few of them. And the thing that bugs me a little bit is it seems like there's a lot of Christians who are getting on the conspiracy theory bandwagon. And this bugs me a little bit because I feel like this shouldn't be our arena. And I see a lot of people who are attaching Christianity and faith to some of these somewhat questionable conspiracy theories. And it's made me scratch my head a little bit, and it's made me wonder, why are so many Christians getting into conspiracy theories right now? And I think it's due to a few factors. And I think really what it comes down to is that we are confusing some issues, okay? So I feel like Christians who are getting into conspiracy theories are confusing a fringe issue with the gospel. And we attack these issues and these theories and defend them with the same fervor that we would that Jesus is God, or that, there's redemption, and that we have a place in heaven. And it kind of assumes the same level of importance in our conversation, in our lifestyle. But these are fringe issues. These are not life and death, heaven and hell kind of issues. And yet, we kind of attach the same importance to them, and that shouldn't be the case. We're also confusing being controversial with being holy. All right? Either way, you're going to be put at odds with the general culture and the world, right? But if you're holy, then you're going to be set apart for good reasons, right? To live a different lifestyle and to uphold a different standard than the rest of the world. If you're upholding conspiracy theories, you're just being controversial, and you're just making enemies because it's kind of fun. And that doesn't really reflect well on the cause of Christ. Also, they're confusing forwarding with evangelism. Okay, how many times have you been on Facebook and you see, if you love Jesus, then you're going to forward this post to 10 of your friends. If you don't care about God at all, then just delete. Like, how awful is that? My salvation does not depend on whether I hit forward on this video, okay? It's a much bigger deal than that. But the thing is, as Christians, we tend to like to believe people, especially people in our tribe, right? The people who are fellow believers. We're like, they would not lie to me. They would not fabricate this story and send it on to me. And they probably wouldn't. But what we forget is that somebody can pass on misinformation without actually being a liar. All it takes to pass on misinformation is to hit forward without checking the facts. And, you know, you can tag on Joyce Meyer or the Billy Graham Association to any message, and suddenly it's like, oh, well, that can be trusted, but we don't know where it came from. So I think as responsible believers, the forwarding should stop with us, okay? So if you get something, then check it out. Do a quick Google search to see if that is even a thing. And there's all kinds of hoax sites that I believe are pretty reputable, like Snopes.com and stuff like that, that can, you know, if you search this thing and the top 10 sites that come up on Google are hoax revealing sites, then that should twig something that maybe this isn't actually accurate. But if we, through our social media and through our conversations, disseminate all this misinformation, then again, it brings disrepute on the cause of Christ in the world. And forwarding stuff about conspiracy theories does nothing to bring people closer to Jesus. You know, once again, it's a fringe issue. It's not the gospel, okay? They're also confusing having faith with being anti-intellectual. So many of these theories lack any kind of scientific or empirical evidence, but so many believers think it's okay to just disregard all that. Well, I don't care what the evidence says because I don't believe that science has the last word. Okay, maybe not. Science doesn't necessarily have the last word, but that doesn't mean that you can ignore actual logic, right? There's some things that just logically do not make sense. And there's smart people who are defining how logically it doesn't make sense. But somehow we think if we are people of faith, then we can just ignore all the thinking part of it and become these anti-intellectual that are just, you know, posting these things that make absolutely zero sense. And we think somehow that's more spiritual. I don't think it is. We confuse disagreement with persecution. If people are disagreeing with me, well, then they're obviously persecuting me. But if it's a fringe issue and doesn't have anything to do with the gospel or morality, it's not really persecution, you know? I'm going to go out on a limb here and say something controversial. COVID-19 restrictions are not persecution, okay? I've heard that a few times. But if it were persecution, then it would just be Christian churches who get closed. It wouldn't be the mosques, it wouldn't be the temples, it wouldn't be the nightclubs, it wouldn't be the casinos, okay? Now, I'm not saying the restrictions we're under are totally equitable and fair. That's another debate. In a free society, we can have that. But it's not persecution because we are not being singled out for our faith. We're just under the same health guidelines as everybody else. And if we're... okay, I won't go there anymore. I've said my piece. Okay, the last thing we're confusing is we're confusing the echo chamber with community. And the echo chamber is this term for, like, when you surround yourself with all the same voice and everybody saying the same thing, then it reinforces that idea in your mind that this is true and everybody is on board with this. And if you're not on board with this, then you're a fool. And so if we confuse that with true community, then we feel like the only way you can have fellowship with somebody is if you agree 100% on everything. But that's not true community. That's not true fellowship. Community happens when we have vast differences among each other, and we love each other anyway. And we get to know each other, and we learn from one another's perspectives and points of view. That is where community happens. If everyone's just saying the same thing all the time, then we just are walking in lockstep on this issue and not really experiencing community. So it kind of becomes a rabbit hole. And speaking of rabbit holes, I think we need to stay out of them. You can hide in a rabbit hole or fall down a rabbit hole. So some of us wind up hiding in a rabbit hole. And I'm borrowing this term from Pastor Graham, who likes to talk about rabbit hole Christians. This idea that as a Christian, you're so afraid that your faith is going to be challenged or you're going to be faced with something bad that you just surround yourself with Christians all the time. And if you have to go out in the world, then you pop out of your rabbit hole and run until you can get into your next Christian rabbit hole and duck down, and you're safe again. Oh, it's good. But that isn't really good. And the echo chamber is a real thing. This rabbit hole that we can surround ourselves with the same voice. Facebook, YouTube, probably other websites have this algorithm that is going to continually feed you the same videos and news feeds and content that are similar to the stuff that you've already watched, okay? Like, if I say watch a marble racing video, which, by the way, is a thing, it's kind of weird, but anyway. If I watch one of those, then YouTube is going to recommend another 4 or 5 different marble racing videos in the hopes that I stay on their site until 2 a.m. watching marble racing videos, which has never happened. Never. Now, this isn't an evil thing. It's just their way of making money, right? They want you to stay on their website. But the unintended consequence of that is that when you're talking about issues or theories or debates, and if you are in that rabbit hole, then that's the only voice that you hear. And then it suddenly seems like everybody in the world is agreeing with you, and you've got all these voices that are reinforcing the same thing, and then you've got people on the other side of the issue in their rabbit hole, and they're all listening to the same thing and the same voices, and we're becoming more and more entrenched. And anyone that isn't in my particular hole is stupid, and they don't know anything, and they haven't even seen the evidence, and they're horrible people probably, and both people are saying the same thing, and nobody's building any bridges. It's a better way to get out of the hole and build some bridges. Engage with people with different points of view. Talk to people who don't think the same way that you do. Talk to people of different generations, of different religions, of different philosophies, and try to find out where they're coming from. And if we do more of that, there's going to be a whole lot less prejudice and a whole lot less division, and we can actually learn from each other. And, that is a good thing. Now, the other way we can get into a rabbit hole, instead of hiding in it, is falling down it, right? And, these holes, particularly on the internet, can go pretty deep, right? That same algorithm that is going to recommend new videos and new articles for you to watch or read is also going to take you very, very far down, okay? And if you get really far down, then it suddenly seems like this thing is the most important thing in the world. And this is the biggest issue. And it actually keeps you from seeing other sides of the story and asking other good questions. Like, okay, let's take a classic conspiracy theory, the moon landing, okay? So there are people who are saying that it was faked back in 1969, that it was all this Hollywood setup, and NASA didn't actually land on the moon, and it was just this fake thing. Now, I think it's been pretty thoroughly debunked at this point, so if you still have questions, I recommend Mythbusters. They did a good show on that. But anyway, the big question that I ask about stuff like this, beyond, what does the obvious evidence say, where'd they get actual pictures of the Earth from space and stuff like that, but the other question is, how many people would have to be in on this conspiracy? Like, for the moon landing to be faked, then all the NASA astronauts, all the aerospace engineers who developed all this stuff, all the politicians, all the NASA staffers, everybody in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, everybody that watched TV in 1969, everybody would have to either have been totally deceived or in on the secret. That's a lot of people who would need to be in on a pretty colossal secret that's stretched over a period of a number of years, right? Like, how many of these people were actually just acting? Were the astronauts in a simulation, or were they on the take? And when you start to ask these questions, these things start to unravel. Because if so many people need to be in on the top level of this secret, they're not going to hang on to that secret forever. Somebody's going to crack. Right? And this can be the case for a lot of different theories. But the thing is, we've got to get out of this rabbit hole. And, okay, now I want to climb out of the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories and move on to the main issue at hand, which is truth. Because Pilate still hasn't got a satisfactory answer, right? If truth doesn't exist, then we're just adrift in our own opinions. There's no foundation to build our lives upon. If everything is true, then that means that the earth is flat and we're all about to be controlled by Bill Gates, who's the Antichrist, through the microchips implanted through our arms and 5G technology. I don't want to live in either one of those worlds. Like, neither of those sound like a good idea to me. There's got to be another answer. And of course there is, and as usually happens, the answer is Jesus. Jesus is the truth, right? And very famously in John 14:6, Jesus said this. He said, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Jesus defines himself as the truth. He's the source, he's the embodiment of truth. He decides what's true and what is right, and he lives it. And because Jesus embodies the truth, that means that we can know what it is as well. Now, how can I say that without being arrogant, that we can have a corner on truth? What gives Jesus a better handle on truth than anybody else in the history of mankind? It's because of his perspective. Perspective is everything. I'm going to ask Jaira to come on up here and help me with something. Because, okay, here's the thing. The people that look at the Fox versus CNN thing and conclude that there's no truth, they are partially right. Because what they are saying is that everything that you hear is from a certain perspective, okay? So you can see this thing here, and this piece of cardboard is white. Would you agree that's white? Okay, here, put on these rose-colored glasses. What color is that now?
Pink.
It's pink? Wait a minute, no, hang on. No, that is clearly yellow. Definitely yellow. I am seeing yellow here. What about you guys out there in TV land? Okay, what do you see? Hang on. There, what color is it now? Is it green? Yeah, it's green. Okay. Thank you, Jaira. I'm going to wear these glasses for a while because they're fun. Yeah. Okay, so depending on what glasses you wear, this thing is going to be a different color, right? And so part of the deal here is that we're recognizing that everybody has some glasses on. Everybody has some lenses that they view the world through. And that colors what we see. We all have a perspective on things. And a lot of times, we don't even know what our glasses are. There are prejudices, there are subconscious stuff, there are upbringing, there are culture, there are what our parents said to us, there are what we watch, what we listen to, who we agree with. All these things, they're very subconscious. We don't even recognize that they're here. Now, sometimes we can arrive at the conclusion that this is actually white by if we ask a bunch of people with a bunch of different lenses and kind of, average it out, we're like, yeah, I think that's white, This is the case in like good historical research, or why in a criminal case they'll call a bunch of witnesses, because you get everybody's different perspective together and you can pretty much arrive at what color this is. But no matter what, there's always going to be some kind of lens on there. There will always be some kind of perspective that is affecting it, okay? But this doesn't mean that there is no actual right answer. It doesn't mean that you can't say definitively that this is white or slightly off-white. There is an answer. You know what it is, and you can find out what it is. But we need to get the right perspective. So what we need in order to find out what color that is we need somebody who doesn't have any lenses on, who can see this thing for what it really is. And we're talking about any truth here. If we were to get the right perspective, we would know what truth is. So, it would be nice if we had somebody whose sight was perfect to tell us what is real. It would be really nice if there was somebody who could see everything all at once, see everything that's happening globally, and know instantly what is true and what is not. Or somebody who can look into the entire scope of human history and see the perspective of all things, past, present, and future. That would be really good. Maybe if there was somebody who could actually see into our hearts and know everybody's individual motivation, that would be really good in determining truth, right? Well, guess who fits that bill? Yeah, it's God, right? He sees the entire scope of history. He sees human hearts. He sees everything, and he sees it perfectly. Isaiah 46:10, God says, I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times, what is still to come. In Jeremiah 17:10, God says, I search the heart and I examine the mind. God's perspective is perfect, and he can be trusted when he says that something is true or something is right. Nobody else has the same point of view as God. And so it makes sense that we just trust him when he says that something is true or something is right. His perspective is perfect. That's how Jesus can say, I am the truth, and be right about it. There's an old parable from India, I believe, about blind men and an elephant. The story goes like this. There's 4 or 5 blind men, and they come across an elephant. And they have to try to figure out what an elephant is. Okay, so the first guy grabs the elephant's trunk. And he's like, hey guys, over here. The elephant is like a snake. And the other guy, he's on the side of the elephant, and he's like, guys, no, hang on. An elephant is actually like a wall. It's solid, it's big. The other guy who's on the foot, he's like, no, you are all wrong. An elephant is actually like a tree. It's round and rooted to the ground and really, really solid. And they start arguing about what an elephant is. Now, the traditional moral of this story is, ha ha ha, silly blind men, you're all right. You all have a portion of the truth. And, you should just get along and just accept that you all have a portion of the truth. Now, that might be the case, but what if somebody else steps in who is not blind and actually knows a thing or two about animals? What if the zookeeper steps into the story and says, hey guys, what you're touching is actually a large African mammal known as an elephant. It has tusks, it has a trunk, it has big feet, and you should probably get out of the elephant pen before it gores you or tramples you to death. This puts a whole different spin on the story, because if somebody can see the big picture, they are the ones who can define what is true and what is not. And they can also tell you what to do about it, right? This is God. God is the zookeeper in the story. He is the one who can see the big picture and tell us what is true and what isn't. So it makes sense to trust him. So here are the things that I want to wind up with today. I want to encourage you with 3 different things, okay? The first one is this. You can trust God. When he says that something is right or true, then you can trust him. Don't waste a bunch of your time in your life arguing with God about his moral code. All right? Don't spin your wheels saying, well, God, I know you've said that that's a bad idea, but I really like doing it, so I'm going to keep on doing it. I'm going to keep on seeing myself in this way, even though your word says something different. Don't waste your time doing that. Just trust God that he knows what is true, and he knows what is right, and he is loving enough to decide the best for your life, and just get under that, and then you get to enjoy his protection and his provision. Second thing I want to encourage you to do is to do the work to find out what God's perspective is. By this I mean dig into the Bible. Find out what the Bible says on any given issue. Find out what God says about what is true and what is right and what we should do with our lives. And that takes some work, and that takes some study, and that takes loving God with your mind. And I think that might be part 3 of loving God with your mind, actually. The third thing I want to encourage you to do is to get out of the rabbit hole. Like, if you're listening to this today and you find that you are spending a lot of your time and energy thinking about, looking at, reading about a particular conspiracy theory, if you spend a lot of your time in the comments section on YouTube defending a certain view or engaging in some of those debates, I want to encourage you to stop wasting your time with that stuff. I have 2 verses from the New Testament on this. 2 Timothy 2:23. Don't have anything to do with foolish and stupid arguments, because you know they produce quarrels. Titus 3:9 says this, but avoid foolish controversies and genealogies and arguments and quarrels about the law, because these are unprofitable and useless. So if you're spending time and energy on all these rabbit holes, the Bible says that it's foolish, it's stupid, it's unprofitable, and it's useless. That's God's point of view. Therefore, it's the truth, because it's from the Bible. We're much better off following Jesus' advice in Mark 12. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. If we focus on those things instead of these fringe issues, we're going to make a much bigger impact on the world. We're going to make the world a better place. Some of these things are just distractions that are thrown our way to try to get us off track and try to make us forget what the real issue is. Love God, love people, trust Him, and pursue the truth. Let's pray. God, thank you that truth exists. Thank you that there is such a thing as truth. And so, Lord, I pray that you would help us all to move closer to truth. Help us to go after it for our own lives. God, you know the things that we need to know, that we need to hear, that we need to be encouraged by. And so, Lord, I pray that you would help us to take those steps closer to the truth. And I pray worldwide as the body of Christ that we would love you with our minds, that we would not engage in foolish and stupid arguments, that we would be genuine in our thought process, that we would do the work to find out what you say, to find out how it meshes with the world that we live in. And most of all, God, that we would be loving, that we would love you, and that we would love our neighbors. In Jesus' name, amen.